China's 20th Communist Party Congress is the most important event on the country's political calendar, taking place every 5 years. This year it began on Sunday, and during this week-long event, President Xi Jinping seeks an unprecedented third term in office. So what does his third term mean for China? What does it mean for Seoul-Beijing ties? And what essentially does it mean for Beijing's broader ties with the West? Welcome to Monday's edition of Issues and Insiders. I'm Min Sunhee. China has opened its party congress, and President Xi Jinping on day one, that is Sunday, sought to chart the country's future course. For more, I have Professor Choo Jae-woo from Kyung Hee University. Professor Choo, it's good to have you here.
Good to see you again.
I also have Professor Susanne Weigelin-Schwiedrzik at the University of Vienna live online. Professor Weigelin-Schwiedrzik, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Professor Choo, we'll start here in the
Yes.
studio. Chinese President Xi Jinping's third term in office, it's widely anticipated. That being said, what does his third term in office mean for the world's second largest economy, especially amid its stringent COVID-19 strategy?
Yes, that's right. He made it obvious that he's going to really commit to his already existing policies, including zero COVID, and I think that's going to be more depressing to the Chinese people and the public. Domestically speaking, the Chinese Communist Party could be more repressive because it already declared in the address delivered by President Xi Jinping that the next 5 years he foresees as a really critical period to forge a foundation for Chinese socialism. And having said that, then he's trying to rally the people around the so-called, ideological competition with the outside world and domestically speaking also. And at the same time, to complete the development of the so-called new ideology that is a Chinese character, Chinese socialism with Chinese character. And given that, he's also committed to, to the defense of so-called China's core interest. Externally speaking, we can expect China to be more aggressive and assertive with its foreign policy goals. And having all said that, I think I have to sympathize with Chinese people that how repressive they're going to be under Xi Jinping's leadership, because especially the way he's going to double down on the zero COVID policy, I think China is going to be isolated for some time.
Right, I see. And against that backdrop, Professor Weigelin-Schwiedrzik, generally speaking, what does Xi Jinping's continued grip on power mean for his ties with Europe, especially amid Beijing's rather ambiguous stance with regard to Russia's war in Ukraine?
Well, if we had expected, excuse me, any more clear versions of the policy that the PRC takes towards issues around the world, I think we are very disappointed, because there's nothing in his report which actually gives us any clarification on this question. The whole report is designed as if there were only China in this world and no other country, like the term the US, Russia, Ukraine, Europe. They don't even appear in the report. Although I have to say that maybe because of health reasons, Mr. Xi Jinping only read 29 out of 79 pages, which were originally actually prepared for this report. And of course, if he had read 79 pages, he would have taken much too long. So they only gave us 29 pages. And these 29 pages actually don't include anything that would clarify China's position.
Right, I see. And Professor Choo,
Yes.
What do you foresee with regard to Seoul's ties with Beijing, especially amid the Union administration's hopes to balance its ties, security ties that is, with the US and its trade ties with Beijing?
Yes, just like Professor just pointed out, we have only 29 pages out of 79 pages available. So based on that reading, just like she said, I don't think there was anything really indicative coming from Xi that how he's going to approach the relationship with the United States. He was trying to be succinct with his report, at least that was going to be open to public. And he didn't. There was not too much elaboration as regarding to the China's relationship with the United States. So we can only make an intellectual guess here. And based on the 29 pages that I read, all of them, and my sense is that he was trying to be a little bit eloquent and in a way soft with his message. He wasn't as energetic or charging as he used to be, but instead he rather really toned it down. That was my feeling, and based on that, probably my best bet would be, I think he's feeling a little tired from this competition going on with the United States at this stage. And with the domestic situation and his third term, which is not, supposedly it is popular, but there's obviously some, opposition expression there in China. So he was well aware of that. So I think if we press a little bit too hard, a little bit harder, and push the envelope a little bit further, then I think we might hit his soft belly. And I think that's the way we should go with the United States in our approach to China. And if we push a little bit, I think China might concede a little bit more.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Professor Weigelin-Schwiedrzik, also on the topic of trade, I believe business heavyweights in Germany have been taking issue with Berlin's policies to reduce reliance on China. Now, speaking within your capacity as a scholar, what are your thoughts on this particular controversy?
Well, we obviously have a big problem in Germany between those people who are running the politics at this moment, and they want to follow the US-American line in more or less decoupling both from Russia and from China. However, the problem is that the economy actually is running into major difficulties, and that is why it is showing resistance. And the most powerful part of the German economy, of course, is the automobile companies, the big automobile companies, and they actually now feel that they have the power to go against the political leadership. And I think this is going to be a very interesting and very important competition between different elites in Germany with major impact on the world. And we have a historical precedence for this, which is actually German industry during the 1930s and 40s.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Professor Choo, back here on the regional front, if I may say so, some pundits believe that Xi Jinping's third term in office, which might be a contradiction to what your thoughts are, they believe Xi Jinping's third term in office may put him on a direct collision path with the US. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, some pundits are alluding to that consequence because of the very statement that was presented earlier through a video clip that Xi Jinping declared that he refuses to renounce the use of forces when it comes to unification of Taiwan. But there's a little misinterpretation there, because we should read the sentence following his statement, saying that that is only confined to the cases that is, Taiwan is being interfered by foreign and external players. And he also further elaborated that his target does not include the people of Taiwan. So what he's basically saying is, unlike many pundits who like to allude to the consequences, he's saying, okay, as long as there's no foreign interference, then we don't have to resort to the, military means to defend Taiwan. And therefore, we don't want to damage or, injure Taiwanese people there. So as long as foreign players stay out of this game, then there won't be any use of military forces. So the collision with the United States could only bound to happen if the United States actively involves in Taiwan, in the defense of Taiwan.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Professor Weigelin-Schwiedrzik, under 10 years of Xi Jinping's reign, some observers claim that China has been able to perhaps expand its geopolitical influence by leveraging its economic clout. To what extent is this an accurate assessment, in your opinion?
Well, I think this hypothesis is right. However, China is also taking a lot of risk, and that is what Xi Jinping is telling us.
Right, I see. Would you like to expand, Professor Weigelin? Are you okay? Maybe we'll take the question to Professor Choo first and give her a few minutes then.
Yes.
Professor Choo, what are your thoughts on the idea that Beijing has been expanding its geopolitical influence through leveraging its economic power?
Oh, absolutely. That's what they're aiming for, and that's what all about this, China dream is about. And Xi Jinping has already declared that, quite some time ago, a decade ago, when he came up with the notion of this China dream, and then that's why he introduced this, industrial blue book, so-called Made in China 2025 and China International Standard by 2030. And so basically he wants China to be leading, to become the leading force on the economic front when it comes to technology and 5G industry, as well as fourth industrial revolution. He wants to take the charge, and he wants to see China taking the charge and leading the way to the China dream fulfilling. Yeah.
Right, and staying with that dream, Professor Choo, it's also been said that Xi Jinping's modernization of the Chinese military itself has also served to greatly boost that of the region, including South Korea. What are your thoughts on this?
Very much, because I think we can infer to the lessons from the deployment of THAAD. The United States wanted to build this so-called missile defense system in East Asia because of the growing China threat. And the THAAD per se is definitely targeted to China, North Korea's nuclear threat. But at the same time, we should look at how it is connected with Japan and Guam and some other countries around China. It is definitely for the United States to defend missile threat from China. And that being the case, we can see other developments. That's why China is really sensitive about reinforcement of U.S. military bases in Korea, and they're really sensitive about what kind of weapon system will be deployed to not only Korea but also especially U.S. forces military bases in Korea. And that's their, focal point here. So that's why they're quite sensitive. And this is all triggered by China being provocative with its military measures, and China interfering with our, water territories and, and aerial territory and so forth. And had China not been too aggressive with its military provocations against the regional players, then I don't think the United States will be that much concerned and must have shown some restraint in reinforcing its military bases around East Asia.
Right. Professor Weigelin-Schwiedrzik, the Chinese Communist Party's updated official history claims Xi Jinping has placed China closer to the center of the world stage than it has ever been before. How do you respond to this rather nationalistic narrative?
Well, I think that this nationalistic narrative has been around for quite some time, especially since the 19th Party Congress. And the formulation you just quoted was one of the central sentences of his speech on the 19th Party Congress. But this sentence does not reappear in his present report. And this shows that, on the one hand side, China is not playing with open cards as much as it was during the 19th Party Congress. And one of the reasons why this is so, I think, is because, as Xi Jinping said, China is living in very risky times, like every other country around the world, and they try to give as much open space for further decision-making as possible. This is one way how we could explain this. And the other way is, of course, that maybe there is still quite some debate among the Chinese leadership about what is actually the right thing to do. And for that reason, they're not giving different messages, as sometimes they do, but they're giving very vague messages. And I think all in all, they're not, as the professor just said, they're not as assertive as they were during the 19th Party Congress, although the section on developing their military strength is very, very open. It is a section where they say, China wants to have a #1 army, where they say, we have to do all kinds of trainings that go very close to reality and things like this.
Right.
So the nationalistic undertone, of course, is still there, and we have to expect China to be quite, let's say, assertive, maybe not aggressive, but assertive. And but at the same time, they're kind of hiding behind the curtain.
Right, I see. All right, Professor Weigelin-Schwiedrzik, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today. And Professor Choo here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for your question.
Right, thank you, Professor. Well, on that note, we end this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.